You'll just tell me like slide and I'll put
Yep.
them forward.
Yep.
Hello, and welcome to How to Best Prepare an Application for Engineering Programs. Our presenter today is Lin Larson, and I will let her go ahead and take it away and present more about herself, her university, and engineering programs.
Great. Thank you so much, Jenica. Sorry for the delay. We ran into a few technical difficulties, so I really apologize for that. Hi, everybody. My name is Lin Larson. I'm Director of Student Recruitment in the College of Engineering here at the University of Texas at Arlington. I have worked in 4 different universities, all with varying degrees of engineering programs, so I've learned a lot in the last 28 years. Most of my time has been in admission and recruitment of international students. So you are in good hands today. And if we could just go to the next slide, please. This is what we're going to talk about in the next 20 minutes or so. How to prepare as either an undergraduate or graduate student. We'll go over the undergraduate admission criteria, how to decide what area of engineering to study, because there's so many different areas. What exams you might need to sit for. We'll talk a little bit about student services, clubs, and postgraduate options. And on the graduate side, we'll also talk about admission criteria and how to find faculty who maybe share your interest, letters of recommendation, all of those things that are needed for a graduate program of study in engineering. And then we're going to touch a little bit on email protocol. So next, please. As an undergraduate student, there are all kinds of different requirements depending on the school that you're applying to. The admission requirements include, your GPA, your scores, your high school academic record for all 4 years. Some schools are going to require an SAT or an ACT, and almost every school is going to require TOEFL, IELTS, or Duolingo unless you have been in an English-only curriculum learning environment for at least 4 years. Each institution, unfortunately, makes its own set of requirements for admission. So there's not a national standard for universities in the United States, but it's all over the place. At one institution I worked at, they had a certain criteria that's much higher than the criteria that I have at my institution. And I'll explain that in a little bit. Some applications are going to require statements of purpose or essays. Some are going to require letters of recommendation. Some might even require you to provide information on a project or a research that you've done, because every single one's going to be a little bit different. So keep that in mind. The thing I tell students is get a big whiteboard or an Excel spreadsheet and just keep track of what is required for every school that you want to apply to. Next, please. So some of the ways that you can best prepare yourself for an engineering program as an undergraduate is you got to love math. So much of engineering is based upon math. And for many programs, you're going to need physics once you get to the university. And before you can take physics, you have to pass Calculus 1 and sometimes Calculus 2. So those are like the stepping stones to get into physics before you can go further on in an engineering program. So math is really important. You don't have to be excellent at math. You just have to really love it and be willing to work through the problems. There are so many different kinds of engineering available. There's bioengineering and civil and computer and software, electrical, petroleum, mining, energy, engineering management, resource engineering. There's all kinds of engineering. There's at least 50, 70, maybe even 100 or more different types of engineering. So it's really important for you to study that area of engineering that really interests you. You also want to be looking at opportunities for projects, research, internships. And something that a lot of students don't think about, and this holds true for both graduate and undergraduate students, is the campus location. Is it in an urban setting? Is it in a rural setting? Is it suburban? Are you going to be close or far away from family? A lot of students want to be as far away from family as possible. Other students want to be close to family or good family friends. The other thing to take into consideration is the weather. Do you want a place that has 4 seasons, very much like much of the provinces in Canada? Or do you want something that's more temperate, that's more even? Do you want to be looking at Florida where, it's warm and muggy a lot of the time? Or do you want to look somewhere like where my school is located, that we do definitely have 4 seasons? They're not quite as drastic as they are to our neighbors farther to the north. You also want to look at campus life. What kinds of student services are available? What's the library system like? What's tutoring like? What's the health services like? What is residence like? Do they have residence? What kind of residence halls are there? What kind of meal plans are available? Take a look at the meals and see if it's the kind of food that you would enjoy eating for a few years. Clubs and organizations are also really important for you to feel connected to a campus community. Research has proved that students who are involved in a campus organization are more successful because they feel that connection to the university. Everybody's going to have some kind of career services, right? And so you're going to want to make sure that you're using those career services so you can get that internship or you can get that job after graduation. And then there are post-graduation options. There's graduate school and there's work. If you're doing a STEM subject, you have the opportunity to work a year with an additional 2 years added on. Next, please. So for graduates, you're going to be looking at a lot of the same issues. A lot of the admission criteria is going to rely on what you did in your bachelor degree. So for example, if you want to go into computer science, for many programs at my school and many others, your bachelor degree has to be in computer science, computer engineering, software engineering, or a very closely related subject. If you want to go into biomedical engineering, you can get in with a degree in biology, in physics, and some of the other sciences. As long as you have a strong science background, you might be able to get into a master's program in bioengineering. So it's also really important that you know what those requirements are when you are applying and looking at universities. And of course, a lot of universities are going to require the GRE for any of their engineering programs. And again, TOEFL, IELTS, or Duolingo. Many times at a master's level, those English proficiency requirement scores are going to be a little bit higher than they are for undergraduate. PhDs are going to require all of that, plus specific departmental information. Sometimes they want to know, how many papers have you published? How many times have you presented at a conference? Do you have a peer-reviewed article in a very well-known associated magazine or publication? And again, sorry to say, not all the requirements are the same throughout the United States. The institution and the department, the academic department, actually make the criteria for any master's or PhD program. Statements of purpose, research experience, and again, publications. Letters of recommendation are probably going to be required for every PhD, sometimes for some master programs, and those can either be academic or employment or project-based letters of recommendation. Next, please. So one of the things that's going to be really critical, especially at the PhD level, and to some extent at the master's level, you're going to want to make sure that there are faculty in that academic department that share your interests. You want to be able to meld with them. You want to mesh with them. You don't want to be like trying to organize yourselves, trying to make a connection when it doesn't really exist. So a faculty member is going to be guiding you through your research, through your master's, through your PhD. So it is really critical that you know that there's somebody on staff. It's not necessarily critical as a master level student to contact faculty first before you apply. As a PhD student, you would definitely want to do that. And again, career centers many times have information about graduate programs that you might be looking at. So that's another resource for you to use. Next, please. So funding, both at the graduate and undergraduate level, every institution has its own format, requirements, and available funding. Some private institutions might be a little less restricted in their funding mechanisms than public institutions. So public institutions are those supported by the taxpayers in the state, and there are regulations as to how we can give students money, especially students who are not within the state that the institution is located in. So for undergraduates, this can be merit-based, it can be need-based, it could be a large amount of money, it could be a small amount of money, it could be a one-time award, it could be renewable for up to your 4 years of study. It might be an automatic scholarship or automatic funding where you don't even have to apply, but because of your application, the school has decided to give you money. Sometimes you need to fill out a separate application. Graduate level is a little bit different. For master level students, funding is not readily available in a lot of institutions. Most funding is going to come in the form of a graduate assistantship, a teaching assistantship, or a research assistantship. Some universities are able to offer scholarships to master level students, but they're not very common. And for PhD students, that's going to be fellowships, okay? So for graduate students, very often at the master's level, you may apply to the university, you can get accepted. You're going to want to let the department know that you're interested in being considered for an assistantship because these are very competitive positions. Very often, master level students may not get an assistantship until their second or third semester out of the 4 that they'll be on campus because faculty want to get to know you, your strengths, and your skills. It's more likely for a PhD student to gain one of those positions because they're going to be on campus for 4 or 5 years. Again, funding can come from the university or from a department. And don't forget private funding. Different companies throughout the world will offer some funding for graduate studies. And check the websites. The websites have a lot of information about funding available. And keep in mind, no one is ever guaranteed funding, whether at the graduate level or at the undergraduate level. Next, please. So I want to talk a little bit about email protocol because this is dear and sweet to my heart. One of the things you have to keep in mind is when you're writing to a university representative, it's a professional relationship. It's not a friend relationship. It's not a family relationship. And you want to make sure that you are addressing the admission officer or the faculty member in a very respectful way. So always say, dear sir, dear admissions office, dear director. If you know the gender of the person you're writing to, go ahead and put Ms. or Mr. But keep in mind, title doesn't always dictate the gender of the person. I could be Dr. Jones or Dr. Smith, and you have no idea. Never start informally with, hey, hiya, hi, yo. I can't tell you how many emails I get where students say, hey, Miss Lynn, you need to do this. It's like, I'm sorry, excuse me, I'm not sure I even know you. If you're not sure how to address the person, you can always use just their last name, Dear M. Larson, but never with their first name. And remember, this is not a personal letter. This is a professional letter. Next, please. So a couple other things to keep in mind when you're writing this professional letter or email or even text message. Writing complete sentences. Use punctuation. Check your spelling and grammar. If English isn't your first language, have somebody else look at it to make sure it's appropriate and you're using the right combination of words. Never write in text speak, please. I got an email last week from a student and it was all written in text speak, and I had to have one of my students come and tell me what it was the student was asking for. When you're writing, be concise and direct and honest, but please don't demand, right? This is a professional relationship. Your words that you're telling us is your story. Your story doesn't belong to anybody but you, and we want to hear your story. But make it short. We don't need to hear your complete life story. To be quite honest, we don't have time to read pages and pages of email. Keep it simple and always be kind and say thank you. Next, please. So a couple of clarifications is concise. Your email to an admission officer should be no more than 3 paragraphs. If it's 3 or more paragraphs, it should be part of your application. And here's a really good example. Good morning, Ms. Larson. My name is Lynn, and I am emailing you about scholarships. As my parents are divorced, please advise me how to complete the paperwork if one parent is unreachable. The student's very kind, asking a very clear request, making a very clear request, and it's a call to action. It's like, Ms. Larson, I need help with this. Please tell me how to do it. That gives me something to do. That gives me a very good idea as to what the student is asking me for. It's not general. Next, please. So the other thing that drives us crazy sometimes, and I'll be very honest, as a university official, is you need to look at the university first before you start sending out emails. If you start saying, tell me about your program in computer science, how much does it cost? What do I need to do to get in? Things like that. All of that information is on our website. If you write me an email like that, I'm just going to direct you right back to the website. Okay. And also think about that purpose of the email, as I said. What do you want from it? What are you asking for? And be specific in your request. Is it an admissions question? Is it an academic question? Is it a housing question? And keep your message, again, personal to you. Next, please. So for PhD inquiries, you are welcome to write to someone with expertise in your field, but don't make it more than 1 to 4 sentences. This is just an introduction. Hi, my name is Lynn. I'm interested in studying bioengineering at the PhD level. I understand there's a faculty member who is in my area of expertise, which are improving X-ray machines, and I'd very much like to have a conversation with them. Please tell me how to make that happen. Thank you. Very concise, very sweet, very kind. If you send a form letter asking a lot of questions, you haven't targeted the university. You haven't done your research, and you really do need to do that as a PhD candidate. In your first email, never attach a CV. Nobody's going to look at it. First, initiate contact. Wait for the faculty to respond to you and tell you, yes, please, now I'd like to see your CV. Always be polite, have a clear idea. And again, scholarships and fellowships are not guaranteed. There's a lot of competition, and you may need to find your own money as a PhD student. Next, please. We're just about done. So, good behavior for everybody on my part and on your part. Create a professional email address and make sure you're checking it. Don't use a cutesy name that maybe you've held on to since junior high school. Write down that email address that you've created, because that's where all the communication is going to go. We don't have any other way of communicating with you. It's unlikely we're going to pick up a phone and call you. It's unlikely we're going to just mail you a whole bunch of stuff. We're trying to save the earth, trying not to use paper. So email is the way we do things. Check your spam, junk, and trash at all times, especially if you haven't heard from us. If you don't think we're responding to you, check those spam mailboxes, because very often my email may go to your spam box because your email doesn't know me yet, right? And please don't send multiple emails in a short period of time. We're all really busy, but we will answer you. I promise we will get back to you. And also be aware that if I can't answer your question about something on my campus, I may forward your email to someone else on my campus who is better suited to answer that question. So check that too. Just don't dismiss any emails coming from a specific university. And next, all right, here is some information. This is my email address. This is our website if you'd like more information about art engineering programs at UT Arlington. The other two email addresses are for the first one, Be an Engineer, is for undergraduate students. If you would like to chat or set up an appointment or a virtual tour with one of our current engineering undergraduate student ambassadors, use that email. Say, hey, I saw Lynn the other night. She said I could write to you and I'd like to set up a Teams meeting so we can chat and you can tell me what is it really like to be a student on your campus. The grad side is grad engineering, and if you just take out the period, sorry about that, it's just grad engineering, no punctuation at uta.edu. My graduate engineering ambassadors will be very happy to respond to you as well. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time. And if there's any questions, we do have about 4 minutes.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. So I have a question, Lynn. What do you do when a student asks you something like, what is the best university for chemical engineering, let's say?
Okay. So I don't know every university in the U.S. that offers chemical engineering. So what I usually tell students, there's a couple of things to do. Ask your teachers. If you're a current university student, ask your faculty. Where would you suggest I look for really good programs in chemical engineering? Because, it's very likely that they know somebody. Do a Google search. Look in, just Google search chemical engineering in the Midwest. If you have a region of the United States that you're interested in, that's also helpful. You can always just look at or ask for help from our friends at Education USA as well if you don't know where to begin to do that kind of search. So I hope that helps.
All right, thank you so much for sharing this presentation. And if anyone has more questions, I know we're wrapping up today, but please reach out to Lynn, or if you have more questions about engineering, of course, also reach out to Education USA, and we're happy to help you.
Absolutely. And again, thank you so much for coming to the presentation tonight. I really appreciate it.
All right. Have a nice evening, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Jenica.